Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. The faint buzz of fluorescent lights was the only sound in the empty office as I typed furiously, lines of code filling my screen. I glanced at the clock, 10:43 p.m. Another late night, but the nagging disquiet in my gut wouldn't let me leave. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over Lena's number. She'd been distant lately, our conversations clipped and tense. Probably just stress from her new job, I told myself. But the unease persisted. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, a click. "Hello?" I said. "Lena?" A man's voice, thick with alcohol, growled back. "Your wife's entertaining me. Hang up." The line went dead. For a heartbeat, I sat frozen, phone still pressed to my ear. Then reality slammed into me like a freight train. "No," I whispered, surging to my feet. "No, no, no." I snatched my coat, nearly ripping it in my haste. The elevator was too slow. I took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting out into the night air. My hands shook as I fumbled with my keys. Come on, damn it. The engine roared to life and I peeled out of the parking lot, my mind a maelstrom of denial and rage. There had to be an explanation. This couldn't be happening. Not Lena. Not us. But that voice echoed in my head, mocking, taunting. "Your wife's entertaining me." I barely registered the blaring horns as I wove through traffic, knuckles white on the wheel. Our house loomed ahead, dark save for the bedroom light. My stomach twisted. The car wasn't even in park before I leapt out, fumbling with my house key. Inside, silence. But there, a creak from upstairs. "Lena!" I shouted, taking the stairs 3 at a time. "Lena, where are you?" No answer. Just rustling from behind our closed bedroom door. I hesitated for a split second, dread pooling in my gut. Then I wrenched the door open. The world tilted sideways. There, tangled in our sheets, was Lena, and beside her, half-dressed and sneering, was Miles Trent, her boss. "Cameron!" Lena gasped, yanking the sheet up to cover herself. "Oh God, Cameron, But I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears, couldn't see anything but red as I advanced on Miles. "What the hell are you doing here?" I snarled. "In my house? In my bed?" Miles smirked, buttoning his shirt with infuriating calm. "Come on, man. You can't be that naive. Your wife's been warming my bed for weeks." I lunged at him, blind with fury, but Lena threw herself between us. "Cameron, stop. Please let me explain." "Explain?" I laughed, the sound raw and jagged. "What is there to explain? I trusted you, Lena. I loved you." Tears streamed down her face, leaving trails in her smeared makeup. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It didn't mean anything, I swear." Miles, he said if I didn't, I'd lose my job. "We need the money, Cameron. You know that." I stared at her, my stomach churning with disgust. "So you thought whoring yourself out was the solution? Get out. Both of you. Get the hell out of my house." Miles chuckled, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. "You heard the man, sweetheart. Playtime's over." Something in me snapped. I yanked my phone from my pocket and started recording, training the camera on their disheveled forms as they gathered their clothes. "What are you doing?" Lena cried, trying to hide her face. "Documenting," I spat. "So the whole world can see what lying, cheating scum you both are." My hands shook as I followed them downstairs, camera still rolling. Lena stumbled, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Cameron, please," she begged. "Don't do this. We can talk about this, can't we?" I laughed, harsh and humorless. "Talk? Now you want to talk? Little late for that, don't you think?" Miles sneered, pulling on his jacket. "Give it up, Lena. Your lapdog's got his teeth in now. No sense groveling." I rounded on him, bile rising in my throat. "You smug bastard. You come into my home, screw my wife, and you think you can just walk away? What are you gonna do?" Miles taunted. "Hit me? Go ahead. I'll bury you in court before you can blink." My fists clenched, every muscle screaming to wipe that smirk off his face. But I kept the camera steady, my voice low and dangerous. "Oh, I'm not going to touch you. I'm going to destroy you. Both of you. I flung open the front door. Now get out. And don't ever come back. Lena hesitated on the threshold, tears still falling. Cameron, I love you. This was a mistake, I swear. Please don't throw away everything we have. For a moment, looking at her, I wavered. Then Miles's hand closed around her arm, tugging her away, and fury flooded back in. You threw it away the second you let him touch you, I growled. We're done, Lena. I want divorce papers on my desk by the end of the week. I slammed the door on her sob, sagging against it as their footsteps faded. My breath came in ragged gasps, the weight of what just happened threatening to crush me. Then I looked down at my phone, the video still recording. With trembling fingers, I pulled up every social media app one had. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I uploaded the video to all of them, my pulse pounding in my ears. Let the whole world see. Let them try to hide now. I collapsed onto the couch, my phone buzzing incessantly as notifications poured in. Likes, shares, comments. The video was spreading like wildfire, but I barely saw them through the tears that had finally broken free. How had we come to this? When had I become so blind? I don't know how long I sat there, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for the cracks I must have missed. It wasn't until my phone rang, Lena's number flashing on the screen, that I stirred. I let it go to voicemail. A week passed in a fog of unanswered calls and sleepless nights. I'd been avoiding the office, working remotely when I could focus long enough to string 2 lines of code together. But this morning, an email from my supervisor. Come see me. We need to talk. I knew what was coming before I even sat down across from Eric, his usual easy smile replaced by a grim frown. I'm sorry, Cameron, he said, not meeting my eyes. But we're going to have to let you go. I stared at him, throat tight. What? Why? My work has been impeccable, you know that. Eric slid a document across the desk, my employment contract. He tapped a clause near the bottom. You signed this when you started. We reserve the right to terminate without cause. It's nothing personal, you understand. But after that video, well, we can't risk the bad publicity. Disbelief gave way to simmering anger as realization dawned. This is because of Miles, isn't it? He's behind this. Eric's silence was answer enough. I stood, shoving my chair back. You're making a mistake. I'm one of your best engineers. I'm sorry, Cameron, Eric repeated, already turning back to his computer. Security will escort you out. In a daze, I packed up my desk, ignoring the curious stares of my now former coworkers. Photos, awards, the custom keyboard Lena had given me last Christmas, all tossed into a cardboard box like so much trash. I was almost to the elevator when a familiar voice stopped me cold. Well, if it isn't the man of the hour. I turned, my grip tightening on the box. Miles stood there, arms crossed, satisfaction oozing from every pore. What do you want? I growled. Haven't you taken enough from me? Miles sked, shaking his head. Now, Cameron, is that any way to talk to your betters? I warned you what would happen if you tried to play in the big leagues. He stepped closer, voice dropping to a stage whisper. Did you really think you could take me on and walk away unscathed? You're nothing, Lawson. And now everyone knows it. Something snapped. Before I could think, my fist connected with his jaw, sending him staggering back. But even as security rushed to pull me away, Miles's laughter followed me. That's assault, you idiot, he called after me. Enjoy the lawsuit. They marched me to the parking lot, my ears ringing with shame and fury. Only when I was alone in my car did I let myself break, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached. How had it come to this? In the span of a week, I'd lost my wife, my job, and any illusion of control over my life. Miles thought he crushed me. He had no idea what I was capable of. I started the engine, cold purpose settling in my chest. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. One way or another, I was going to make him pay. The cafe bustled with the morning rush. The clatter of dishes and hiss of espresso machines a stark contrast to the silence of my empty apartment. I nursed a cooling coffee, watching the door. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Diana Trent's eyes darted nervously as she approached, sunglasses perched atop her head despite the overcast day. Up close, I caught the edge of a bruise peeking out from her collar, hastily covered with makeup. "Mrs. Trent," I said, standing to pull out her chair. "Thank you for meeting me." She slid into the seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "It's Diana, please. And thank you for reaching out, Mr. Lawson. Though I'm not sure what I can do for you." "Cameron," I corrected gently. "And it's not what you can do for me. It's what we might be able to do for each other." Diana's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "I don't know what you mean." I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. "Diana, I know what Miles is capable of. The lying, the manipulation, the cruelty. I've seen it firsthand." She flinched at his name, gaze dropping to the table. "You don't know anything?" "I know he's hurting you," I said softly. Diana's head snapped up, panic in her eyes. I gestured to my own collar. "You missed a spot." For a moment, she was silent, worrying her bottom lip. Then, so quietly I had to strain to hear, "He'll kill me if he finds out I'm talking to you." My fists clenched under the table, rage bubbling up at the fear in her voice. "He won't find out. I promise." Diana laughed bitterly. "You don't know Miles like I do. He has eyes everywhere. Connections. I can't risk it. My children." "Hey." I reached across the table, not quite touching her trembling hands. "I understand. But Diana, you don't have to live like this. There are people who can help. Resources." She shook her head, tears welling up. "You think I haven't tried? The police, lawyers, they all look the other way. Miles is untouchable." "No one's untouchable," I said firmly. "What if I told you I know someone? A lawyer who isn't afraid of Miles or his cronies?" Diana stared at me, a tentative hope dawning in her eyes. "Who?" I took a deep breath. What I was about to suggest wasn't just risky. It was opening old wounds I'd tried hard to forget. But looking at Diana, the shadows under her eyes and the tremble in her hands, I knew I had no choice. "His name is Blake Harrison," I said, "and he might be our only shot at taking Miles down." The law offices of Harrison and Associates loomed before me, all gleaming glass and polished brass. I tugged at my collar, sweating despite the chill in the air. This was a mistake. Blake and I hadn't spoken in years, not since. No, I couldn't think about that now. I needed his help, no matter how much pride I had to swallow to get it. The receptionist eyed me dubiously as I approached. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I cleared my throat. "Just tell Blake that Cameron Lawson is here to see him. Please." She arched an eyebrow but picked up the phone, murmuring into the receiver. A moment later, she gestured to the elevators. 13th floor. "Mr. Harrison will see you now." The ride up seemed to take an eternity. When the doors finally slid open, revealing a corner office with a view of the Seattle skyline, my stomach lurched. And there, silhouetted against the window, was a ghost from my past. "Hello, Cameron," Blake said, not turning around. "Long time no see." I stepped into the office, hands shoved in my pockets to hide their trembling. "Blake, you're looking well." He snorted, finally facing me. He'd filled out since college, but I'd recognize that sardonic smirk anywhere. "Cut the small talk. What do you want?" "I need your help," I said bluntly. "No point beating around the bush. It's about Miles Trent." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Trent? The business tycoon? What? Did he screw you over on some software deal?" "Not exactly." I sank into one of the leather chairs across from his desk, suddenly exhausted. "It's a long story." "I've got time," Blake said, leaning back in his chair. "Though I have to say, I'm curious what could possibly bring you crawling back after all these years. Last I checked, you wanted nothing to do with me." The bitterness in his voice stung, but I couldn't blame him. "That was a long time ago, Blake. We were kids." "Kids," he echoed. "Right. And Lena? How is the blushing bride these days?" I winced. "We're getting divorced, actually. She was sleeping with her boss, Miles Trent." Blake whistled low. "Damn. I'd say I'm sorry, but yeah." I scrubbed a hand over my face. "Look, I know we left things badly, but this isn't just about me. Trent's wife, Diana, He's abusing her. And he's got half the lawyers in Seattle in his pocket. You're the only one I could think of who might be able to help. For a long moment, Blake just looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed, reaching for a bottle of scotch on a nearby shelf. You always did have a hero complex, Lawson. He poured 2 glasses, sliding one across the desk to me. Start from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. So I told him everything. The affair, the video, losing my job, Diana's bruises and haunted eyes. By the time I finished, the scotch was gone and Blake was pacing behind his desk, brow furrowed. You realize what you're asking, right? He said finally. Going up against someone like Trent, it won't be easy or safe. I met his gaze steadily. I know, but Blake, if anyone can do this, it's you. You're the best lawyer I know. He barked out a laugh. Flattery will get you nowhere, Cam. It's not flattery if it's true. Blake stared at me for a long moment, conflict warring across his face. Then he sighed, dropping back into his chair. You're going to get me disbarred. Or killed. Possibly both. I felt a grin spreading across my face, the first real smile in weeks. So you'll do it? God help me, Blake muttered. Yeah, I'll do it. But Cameron? His eyes hardened. This isn't just for you. It's for justice. Don't forget that. I nodded solemnly. I won't. Thank you, Blake. Really? He waved a hand dismissively, but I caught the ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. Yeah. Now get out of my office. We've got work to do. Lena_87, I muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. Of course. Blake leaned over my shoulder, frowning at the laptop screen. You're sure this is legal? I snorted. Says the lawyer. Relax. It's her cloud account, and I'm still listed as an authorized user. She probably forgot to remove me after. I trailed off, throat tightening. It had been weeks since I'd let myself think about that night, the betrayal still a raw wound. But now, scrolling through Lena's emails and text messages, it all came flooding back. There. A whole folder of exchanges with Miles, dating back months. My stomach churned as I skimmed them, the pet names and sexual innuendo painting a vivid picture. Jackpot, Blake murmured, eyes widening as he read over my shoulder. Cam, some of these messages, he's practically admitting to coercing her. This is gold. I nodded mechanically, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. What about photos? Diana mentioned he likes to keep trophies. Blake grimaced. Yeah, about that. I've been talking to her, building trust. She's scared, Cam. Really scared. But she did give me this. He pulled out his phone, swiping to a photo. My blood ran cold. It was Diana, clearly taken without her knowledge, asleep in bed. But what made my fists clench were the bruises littering her arms and shoulders, unmistakable fingerprints against pale skin. Son of a bitch, I breathed. How recent? Last week, Blake said grimly. And that's not all. Diana's been keeping a journal, documenting every incident. Dates, times, injuries. She's smarter than Trent gives her credit for. I leaned back in my chair, mind racing. So we've got the affair, the coercion, the abuse. Blake, tell me we have enough. Tell me we can nail this bastard. Blake was quiet for a moment, that furrow between his brows that meant he was strategizing. It won't be easy, he said finally. Trent has resources, connections. He'll fight dirty. So will we, I said fiercely. Blake's lips quirked in a ghost of a smile. There's the Cam I remember. He sobered quickly. But listen, we have to be careful. Meticulous. One misstep and Trent's lawyers will be all over us for invasion of privacy defamation. I don't care about me, I interrupted. I've already lost everything. But Diana, the kids, we have to get this right. For them. Blake nodded slowly. We will. But Cameron? He caught my gaze, his eyes intent. Don't do anything stupid, all right? Let me handle the legal side. You've done enough cowboy justice for one lifetime. I thought of the viral video, of Miles's smirk as security dragged me away. Yeah, I said quietly. I hear you. We worked late into the night, poring over financial records and piecing together a timeline. By the time dawn broke over the Seattle skyline, bleary-eyed and over-caffeinated, we had the beginnings of a case. It wouldn't be easy. Miles Trent had money, power, a cadre of shark-like lawyers at his disposal. But looking at the evidence laid out before us, Diana's bruises, Lena's messages, the pain and fear Trent had sown, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Hope. The courtroom hummed with tension as I straightened my tie, pulse quickening. Across the aisle, Miles lounged in his Italian suit, whispering to a cluster of lawyers who looked like they charged by the breath. The arrogance radiating off him made my fists clench. "Easy," Blake murmured beside me. "Don't let him get to you. That's what he wants." I nodded tightly as the bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise. Court is now in session," the Honorable Judge Harriet Knowles presiding. As we stood, I caught Diana's eye where she sat behind us, knuckles white around a tissue. I tried for a reassuring smile. "You've got this." Judge Knowles, a steel-haired woman with sharp eyes, surveyed the room. "Be seated. Now then, in the matter of Trent versus Trent, are both parties ready to proceed?" "Ready, Your Honor," Blake and Miles's lead counsel chorused. "Very well." Judge Knowles nodded to Blake. "Mr. Harrison, your opening statement." Blake rose, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, members of the jury, this case isn't just about a messy divorce or office affair gone wrong. It's about power. The power Miles Trent holds over his employees, his business associates, and his wife. Over the course of this trial, we will prove not only that Mr. Trent engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, but that he has systematically abused and manipulated the women in his life. Coercion, assault, blackmail. By the time we're finished, you'll see Miles Trent for what he truly is. A bully who uses his wealth and influence to hurt those weaker than himself. And it's time someone finally stood up to him." Blake's words hung in the air as he sat. I risked a glance at Miles. His smirk had faltered, replaced by a scowl. Good. The next hours passed in a blur of testimony. I took the stand first, voice steady as I recounted finding Lena with Miles, the threatening phone call, losing my job. "And did Mr. Trent ever directly state that your termination was his doing?" Blake asked. I nodded. "Outside the office that day, he said, and I quote, 'I told you you'd regret this.'" "Objection, hearsay," one of Miles's lawyers drawled. "Overruled," Judge Knowles said. "The witness may continue." When it was the defense's turn, they came at me hard. "Mr. Lawson, isn't it true that you assaulted my client outside your former workplace?" I gritted my teeth. "I punched him, yes." "So you have a history of violent outbursts when things don't go your way." "Objection." Blake stood. Argumentative. Sustained. "Counselor, stay on topic." They tried to paint me as unstable, obsessed. But I kept my cool, even when they brought up the video. An invasion of privacy, Miles's lawyer tutored. Posting such intimate footage without consent. "There was nothing intimate about what I saw that night," I snapped. "And I'd do it again." The world deserves to know what kind of man Miles Trent really is. After me came a parade of character witnesses. Former employees of Miles's company, all women, all with stories of harassment and veiled threats. Blake was building a pattern, and judging by the jurors' expressions, it was working. But the real turning point came when Diana took the stand. She trembled as she was sworn in, eyes downcast. But as Blake gently led her through her testimony, steel crept into her voice. "Diana," Blake said softly, "can you tell us about the night of September 3rd? Diana took a shuddering breath. We'd been at a charity gala. Miles had been drinking. When we got home, he was angry about something. I don't even remember what. He grabbed my arm, twisted it behind my back. I thought he was going to break it. Then he shoved me into the bedroom, and she broke off, tears spilling over. Blake waited, patient. "It's all right. Take your time." Diana nodded, swiping at her cheeks. "He me. And afterward, he said if I ever told anyone, he'd make sure I never saw my children again." A soft gasp rippled through the gallery. I stared at Miles, fury blazing in my chest. He wasn't smirking now. "Diana," Blake said, "did you seek medical attention after this assault?" "Yes. I told the doctor I'd fallen." "And why is that?" Diana's gaze flicked to Miles, then away. I was afraid. Miles has friends everywhere. Police, hospitals. I thought no one would believe me. Blake nodded sympathetically. I understand. Now, Your Honor, I'd like to submit into evidence medical records from Harborview Hospital, dated September 4th. He handed a file to the judge. You'll note the attending physician's observations of bruising and abrasions consistent with sexual assault. It went on like that for over an hour. Diana's quiet voice never wavered as she laid out years of abuse. The excuses she'd made, the injuries she'd hidden. By the time Blake gently said, "No further questions," half the jury was in tears. Miles's lawyers, seeing the tide turning, went on the attack. Mrs. Trent, you expect us to believe that after all these alleged incidents, you never once went to the authorities? Diana flinched. I told you. I was scared. Scared. Or perhaps you knew such accusations would be ludicrous. Tell me, how long have you been conspiring with Mr. Lawson to slander my client? Objection. Blake surged to his feet, badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Knowles said sharply. Mr. Hadley, you're on thin ice. It was a desperate play, and it showed. As Diana stepped down, shaken but unbroken. I knew we had him on the ropes. The final nail in the coffin was the evidence. Lena's messages, documenting Miles's thinly veiled threats if she didn't play nice. Diana's journal, a meticulous record of every shove, every cruel word. And the photos, God, the photos. Bruises in the shape of handprints. A split lip. Diana's tear-streaked face. Your Honor, Blake said, displaying the images on a screen for the court. This is the real Miles Trent. A man who uses his power to terrorize those who can't fight back. Who twists love and loyalty into weapons. The prosecution rests. We adjourn to await the verdict, the air thick with anticipation. Blake paced the conference room while I sat with Diana, murmuring what I hoped were reassurances. You did so well up there, I told her. I know how hard that must have been. Diana attempted a smile. I keep thinking he'll burst in, that this is all a dream and I'll wake up back in that house and... Hey! I covered her hand with mine. It's over. He can't hurt you anymore. She nodded, blinking back tears. Thank you, Cameron, for everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't reached out that day. Before I could respond, Blake's phone buzzed. They're back, he said tersely. Let's go. The walk back to the courtroom felt endless. As we took our seats, I searched the jury's faces for some hint, but they were impassive. Judge Knowles's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. My heart pounded as she read from the paper. On the charge of assault in the second degree, we find the defendant, Miles Trent, guilty. A relieved sob from Diana. I squeezed her shoulder as the litany continued. Guilty, guilty, guilty. And in the matter of Trent versus Trent, Judge Knowles said when the criminal charges were through, this court finds overwhelmingly in favor of the plaintiff. Mrs. Trent is granted full custody of the minor children, with Mr. Trent's visitation to be supervised until further notice. Furthermore, Mr. Trent will pay alimony in the amount of... I tuned out the legalese, focused on Diana's face. For the first time since I'd met her, she was smiling. Really smiling. It's over, Blake murmured, clapping me on the back. We did it. Across the aisle, Miles's composure had finally cracked. He ranted at his lawyers, face purple with rage. As the bailiffs moved to take him into custody, our eyes met, and I couldn't resist. I approached him, Blake tensing behind me, but I kept my voice low, controlled. You did this to yourself, Miles. I just made sure everyone else could see it. He lunged at me, snarling, but the bailiffs already had his arms. As they hauled him away, his furious shouts echoed off the walls. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Outside, cameras flashed as reporters clamored for statements. Blake fielded most of them, ever the professional. I hung back with Diana, marveling at the steel in her spine as she faced the scrutiny. I want other women to know they're not alone, she told a journalist. That it's never too late to speak up, to get help. There is life after abuse. I thought of Lena then, of the mediation session where she'd walked away with half of the little I had left. The twinge of bitterness surprised me. Shouldn't I be over it by now? But watching Diana, radiant with hard-won freedom, I knew I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. 3 months later, I hefted the last box into my new apartment, surveying the bare walls with satisfaction. After the dust settled from the trial, I'd realized there was nothing keeping me in Seattle. Too many ghosts, too many sideways glances from strangers who'd seen that video. So here I was in Portland, ready to start over. New job, new home, new life. The tech startup that hired me had been thrilled by my resume and blissfully ignorant of the scandal. For the first time in too long, I felt hopeful. I was unpacking books when my phone buzzed. An email notification. The sender made me pause. Diana Trent. Cameron, I hope this finds you well, and that Portland is everything you hoped. The kids and I are settled in San Diego now. It's strange, learning to breathe again after holding it for so long. But every day gets a little easier. I've been thinking a lot about everything you did for me. For us. Thank you doesn't begin to cover it, but I'll say it anyway. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. For believing me when I barely believed myself. You gave me my life back, Cameron. I don't know if our paths will cross again, but I want you to know that you'll always have a friend in me. Be happy. You deserve it. All my gratitude. Diana. I read it twice, something warm unfurling in my chest. Then, smiling, I opened my laptop to reply. Dear Diana, you have no idea how good it is to hear from you. I paused, the cursor blinking. So much had happened, so much lost and gained. But for the first time in a long time, I felt the future stretching out before me, a clean slate. It wouldn't be easy. There were still wounds to heal, trust to rebuild. But after everything, I knew this much. I was ready for whatever came next. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.